Okay, so today we're going to deconstruct a term that you've probably heard a million times, native speaker. But in a world that's more connected than ever, what does that phrase actually mean anymore? Let's dig in.
I mean, it seems like a pretty simple question, right? You're understanding what I'm saying, I'm speaking English, so we're good. But the real answer? Oh, it is way more complex, and honestly, a whole lot more interesting than you might think.
You see, for a long, long time, we had what seemed like a really neat and tidy way to categorize every single English speaker on the planet. It was a story that just made sense of all the history and geography. But then the world changed. And I mean, it really changed. Globalization, the internet, migration, they didn't just tweak the rules, they completely rewrote them. And suddenly, those neat little boxes we used, they just couldn't hold the reality of how we all speak English today.
Think about this number for a second. 2 billion. That's the estimated number of people who speak English around the world. And with a number that massive, yeah, those old, simple models, they just don't cut it anymore.
So, to really get why the model is breaking down, we first have to understand what that model was. And it all starts with this traditional three-way split. All right, first up, you've got ENL, which stands for English as a Native Language. This is the group we all traditionally think of as native speakers, right? People born in places like the UK, the US, Australia. That's about 360 million people. Next is ESL, or English as a Second Language. Now, this category is really tied to colonial history. We're talking countries like India, Nigeria, or Singapore, where English is an official language, using government, in schools. This group is also pretty big, around 360 million. And finally, we have EFL, English as a Foreign Language. And this is the largest group by an absolute mile. We're talking potentially over 1 billion people in countries with no colonial ties to Britain. Think China, Japan, Germany, who learn English mostly to talk to the rest of the world.
So you've got ENL, ESL, EFL. That seems to cover everybody, doesn't it? Well, not quite. In fact, this whole framework completely misses the single biggest way English is actually used in the world today. And that's where ELF comes in, English as a lingua franca. Now, this is a total game changer because unlike the others, it's not about where you're from, it's about what you're doing with the language. It's a business person from Germany talking to a client in Japan. It's the global connector, and it is absolutely massive.
Probably the most famous attempt to visualize all this came from the linguist Braj Kutru. So let's take a look at his classic model, because it was super influential for a long time.
So, Kotcher saw the world of English as 3 concentric circles. Right in the middle, you have the inner circle. Those are your traditional, native-speaking ENL countries. Then you've got the outer circle, which is for those former colonies, the ESL countries. And surrounding them both is the huge expanding circle, which is basically everyone else learning English as a foreign language.
But here's the crucial part. This model isn't just about geography. It's about power. It's about who gets to set the rules. The inner circle was seen as norm providing. They decide what's correct English. The outer circle was norm developing, creating its own unique standards, like Singlish. And the huge expanding circle, they were seen as norm dependent, just expected to follow the rules that the inner circle made up. It's a really neat model, right? Super elegant, but like we said, it started to crack under the pressure of the real modern world. So let's dig into why. Okay, so what are the big problems here? Well, for starters, the lines they're super blurry now. You can have someone in an outer circle country like Singapore who grows up speaking English as their first language. And that leads to another issue. The model is all about history, not how people actually use English today. It also makes this huge assumption that native automatically means proficient, which we all know isn't always true. And the biggest issue, it just has no real way to account for that massive world of ELF speakers we talked about. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. You know, being born in an inner circle country doesn't guarantee you have great language skills, just like learning English later in life is no barrier at all to becoming incredibly fluent. So if Kotcher's circles are looking a little, well, outdated, what's next? Where do we go from here? Well, linguists are coming up with some fascinating new ways of thinking that actually reflect the world we live in now. And one of the biggest new ideas is a total shift in focus. It's about moving away from geography and focusing on proficiency. It's not about where you're from, it's about how well you can communicate. For example, a linguist named Marco Modiano, came up with a model that completely flips the script. In his version, the people at the center are the ones who are proficient in what he calls international English. And it doesn't matter where they were born. So a highly skilled speaker from South Korea could be more central to the English-speaking world than a native speaker with poor communication skills. It's a pretty radical shift.
Okay, so that's one new way of looking at it, but another approach adds yet another layer of nuance, and it's all about context. It's not just about who is talking, but why they're talking and how they're talking.
There's this framework from Amr Mahboub, and it's brilliant. It basically says you have to look at three things. First, the users. Is it a local chat or a global interaction? Second, the uses. Is it a casual conversation or are you writing a technical paper? And third, the mode. Is it spoken or written? This shows that our language isn't some fixed thing. It changes with the situation, a reality those old models just completely ignored. And all of this brings us right back to that big question we started with. In a world where a speaker from Nigeria and a speaker from Japan can communicate flawlessly in English, in a world where your skill matters more than your birthplace, what does the idea of a native speaker being the ultimate authority even mean anymore? It's a question that sort of redefines who owns English for all 2 billion of us, and it's definitely something to think about. Thanks for diving into this with me.